Welcome back to my YouTube channel. My name is Noah, and in today's video, I would like to expose the real reason as to why modern day Americans feel like they're broke. I'm going to do this by pulling in a real example from a client that came to me personally and stated that they felt like they were very behind on their finances for the previous year, and they wanted to know not only why that was, but what they can do to put themselves in a better financial position moving forward in the next 5 to 10 years. This example is very realistic, so I think it might be relatable to many of you watching, so I hope you can take something away from it. With that being said, let's get right into the example. Okay, so here we are back in Excel as always for this example. Before we begin, I just want to review a little bit of information about what we're dealing with as far as the client side goes. So this individual, like I previously mentioned, came to me and mentioned they had concerns and wanted to know more information and what they can do and all of that good stuff financially. So this individual is a gentleman that moved to Austin back in 2022. And when he got here, his salary was $65,000. This equated to his take-home income being $50,619. And although it's not really relevant to this video, his annual investing amount was $3,000. So this is a pretty good salary, right? You can't really complain with this. You're moving to a new city, and it's exciting, and it's not a complete dog shit salary. So he was really excited to get this move down here and start living his life here. Now, within my process, the financial process that I developed, I like to organize and I like to divvy out essentially the expenses that the individual will experience within a year into 18 disparate categories, and these are the categories here from all the way from rent and mortgage down to other debt and miscellaneous and donations and so on. This is a very good way to look at your finances when they're spread out like this, because it gives you a lot clearer picture of where your expenses are going. So that's exactly what I did for this individual, and this is a breakout from the dashboard that I created for him. I also like to break out the expenses on a monthly basis as well as an annual basis, and this just helps with kind of visualizing how often the money's leaving and so on. So on a monthly basis, for example, his rent was $1,750, and annually that would equate to $21,000. And all the way down here, his debt, $300 a month, $3,600 on the year. So now that we have a decent breakdown of where this individual's expenses went, let's take it one step further and take a different look at what we're seeing right here. So although the previous image, or the previous slide rather, was pretty helpful, right? It helps us kind of look at different expenses. Okay, this was dining, investing was this, entertainment was this, and so on. We need to, like I said, peel it back one more layer and organize it differently to help paint this grander picture of what the finances look like for the entire year. So that's this slide right here. What I've done is I've essentially organized the expenses from greatest to smallest, as well as their corresponding categories, right? So this helps us paint another stroke in the painting, really, where it identifies what were the heavy expenses, right, on an annual basis, to what were the expenses that really didn't matter. And as an example, the rent and mortgage, and this is often the case, is very heavily weighted, right? The rent for the year was $21,000, and all the way at the bottom here, donations, right? Donating nothing. Frankly, I don't either. So I can't really judge there, and child, right? He doesn't have a kid. And in this example, this is a good thing, right? So this is 0. We like to see zeros for these different categories. But now, in order to keep adding detail to this individual's finances, we need to peel the onion back one more layer, right? So that's what we're going to do in our next slide. One more way that we can kind of change the impact of what we're looking at right here is if we quantify which of these expenses were essential and non-essential for the individual to basically continue living, continue contributing to One more way that we can add more detail to this picture is to identify which of these expenses were essential and which of them were non-essential. What is this going to do? This is basically going to allow us to say, well, which of these expenses could I not live without, right? Which can I take out, or which can I heavily reduce? Which ones are here to stay, right? So I did just that, and here are the results. Boom. So here we go. This column right here, column D, is the breakdown of which of these categories right here are essential and which of them are not. So this is helpful, right? This is looking at it like this, we can see clearly that rent is obviously essential. You're not going to go live under the bridge, right? You're not going to set up a box, next to your work and hope that they hope that they don't say anything. And all the way down here, like I said, donations, although nice in theory, and they make you feel good, a lot of people need all of the money that they have. So we don't generally classify donations as essential here. And he doesn't have a child, right? So this category is going to be non-essential as well. But this is great. And so now we can understand what ones were essential and what ones were not. But in the next slide, I think it's fair to peel another layer back to try to get a even clearer image of what's going on here. Okay, so here we are with another layer, more detail to put together to paint a picture about this individual's finances. So what I've done in this slide here is I've essentially taken over 90%, it's going to be about 93, 94% of his total 2022 expenses, and I've basically incorporated them right here, right? Because sometimes it's best to not look at the entire puzzle, at the same time, right? Sometimes you isolate maybe 20 pieces and work with those and, then start putting the entire puzzle together. It can be overwhelming to look at everything at the same time. So what I've done, like I said, is I've isolated 93, we'll call it, percent of his entire expenses for 2022. And we also know from the previous slide if they're going to be essential or not. So these are the categories that make up 93% of this individual's expenses. And we can see, rent is on there, groceries, utilities, electric, discretionary, and so on. And we also know if they are essential or not, right? And what we can notice immediately, you don't have to be any kind of genius to not see this, but there's quite a few yeses and, a few no's sprinkled in. Just seeing here, the first one is yes, 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 no, yes, no, yes, yes, no. So it looks like there's 6 yeses to 3 no's. So there's 9 total categories here, and 6 of them are yes, meaning they are absolutely essential expenses for this individual to live and, function here in Austin. So now things are starting to come together a little bit more, right? We know that, he does, we were able to isolate a lot of his expenses, but we know now that, 6 out of 9 were essential, right? He could not, live without groceries and rent and so on. So this is starting to get a little bit interesting, right? It's kind of looking like the bulk, or, the majority of his expenses in total needed to be spent, right? You can't get away from essential expenses. So in the next slide, we're going to go even further into this rabbit hole that we've created to try to finish up this picture. So here we are again, and what I've done is I've broken out the essential expenses that I, classify as essential, and the categories that I classify as non-essential, right? So here we have mortgage and groceries and, the vehicle and paying back debt and so on as essential expenses. And then the non-essentials, right, are going out to eat, entertainment, right, shopping, having like a gym membership and, beauty, all these beauty, whatever people do, I get a haircut, and that's pretty much it, right? But, there's certain things that people like to do. And then miscellaneous expenses are basically, I don't know what that is. I don't know how it got charged to my card, but they're on there. What do we, it is what it is, right? So for this individual, for his 2022 expenses, his essential expenses were $42,720. and his non-essential expenses were $8,040, right? So this is a very, very, um, these two numbers are very, very different. I think in modern day media, there's a lot of older individuals who will, kind of harp on the younger generation, stating that they don't know how to spend money, or they don't know how to save money. Rather, they're spending it in all the wrong ways. They're spending it on, frivolous activities, and they're not caring about themselves and their retirement, and all of those things, right? But as we've kind of peeled back layers, it's kind of looking like the majority, the gross majority of this individual's expenses are absolutely essential for him to live, right? For him to function, for him to get around town, to eat, and so on. So what I want to do is I want to expose a couple more columns here that I hope add even more detail to what I'm trying to say here. So I brought out two more columns here, and these columns, B and D here, are essentially the percent um, from that each category that contributes to this individual's entire expenses for 2022. So immediately, this number sticks out, right? 41%. So what is 41%? Rent and slash mortgage. In this example, he is renting. He doesn't have any kind of house, which is probably for the better here, right? But we can see that 41% of his income, of his spendable, or of his expenses rather, pardon me, came from rent, just rent, right? And we go down one, right? 16 were groceries, right? So him eating and, making sure that he's not becoming anemic, or, whatever it may be, just, making sure he's well fed, 16%. And then we go down and down and down, but, his vehicle, paying off his car, 8% there, paying off debt, student loans, and etc., 7%. And then medical, 4, electric and utilities, which is obviously essential, 2, 3%, gasoline, 2, and then, so on and so forth. And then when you look into non-essentials, dining out, right, which, like I said, isn't, I don't believe is completely essential, even though it's food, 7% there. Entertainment, 5%, discretionary, 2%, fitness, 1%, and then between beauty and miscellaneous, 0.5% each. So what is this data telling us here, right? It's telling us that no matter how you move these numbers around, it is costing him the most money, $42,000 annually, to have essential stuff, right? To live, to just be around here, to live in an apartment, to eat food, to have a car, to pay for gas for the car, to pay for his dental visits, a cavity filling, and so on. So it's really coming together that it's not really so much him spending money frivolously, like a lot of mass media likes to portray it as, but it's just him being alive. It is just you being here and being alive that is taking up the majority of your money. And this is clearly, these percentage values right next to these numbers here is the percentage of all of the expenses, right? So essential expenses, like I said, are 84%, almost 85% of his expenses are absolutely essential, right? And there's arguing, if they are essential or not, and some of these are fair, but rent and mortgage would, like I said, what are you going to do? Live under the bridge, live under the box? You're going to hide in a tree? That's not going to happen, right? Especially moving to a new city, you want a nice place to call home. Groceries, what are you not just going to eat? You're just going to get food out of the trash, or ask for food on the road. I mean, you're going to eat, right? So that's essential. Your vehicle. We live in America, right? In this example, this is Austin. Vehicles are, I don't like saying this, but they are absolutely essential. If you can't borrow one and you've got to walk places, man, you're not going far. It's going to be tough, right? And I personally am not a fan of this, but that is just the reality. Other debt, what are you going to do? Just run away from your student debt and, get on a train and try to ditch town to get away from debt. No, you're going to have to pay your debt, right? The student loan forgiveness is not happening anytime soon. So that you have to pay your debt. Medical, this is another one, right? How do you argue that you're not going to have to pay for this? Where you're going to get your tooth filled and then run out of the dental office, right, and not pay for it? No, that's not going to happen. Electric and utilities, you're not going to shower, you're not going to use power. This is another one. How do you argue that you will not need to rack up an electric and utility bill just living? Gasoline goes hand in hand with cars, right? You're not, even EVs, you got to pay for all of the expenses associated with them, and you got to pay to charge too. But in this case, gasoline, you need gas to go places, right? You need gas to just go to work and come back, so that's an expense that you need to take on. Your employer isn't gonna cover that. Your phone, nowadays, if you don't have a phone, you may as well live on an island alone, and that's just the reality of it, right? Your pet, you don't need to have a pet necessarily, but once you do, you can't not feed them. You need to feed your pet, so that's an essential too. Child, in this case, he doesn't have one, so it's 0, right? And I think he's happy that this is 0 as well. But clearly, we can see, peeling back the layers to this onion, starting right with a breakdown of all of the expenses and what they were, going down to if they were essential or not, and then kind of isolating some of them to determine where the bulk of the expenses were coming from, and then finally identifying the real percentage values. And clearly we can see that this individual doesn't spend much money on his own entertainment, his own dining out, which is what everybody likes to do, right? They like to have fun, enjoy the city. But his expenses are all coming from just being here, right? Just being alive, just contributing to society, just living, right, are where 84% of his expenses are coming from. And as we saw in the beginning, he actually burned more money than he did take in for 2022. So there you go. Now you know that you just living, you just breathing air, you just living in an apartment, eating, driving to work, driving back, and occasionally having a night on the town and going out to eat, where your expenses are going to come from. And it's just being around, right? In this previous example, like I said, 85% of this individual's expenses are essential for him to just be here, right? So I wouldn't let anybody try to insinuate the idea that your frivolousness is what's keeping you tight on finance, right? Until they have the evidence that I've shown you. The general consensus, in my opinion, is that just being alive is where the expenses are coming from. Thank you for making it this far into the video if you did. I hope the information presented to you was helpful in any kind of way, and also showcase that it's not always your fault that your expenses are higher than you want them to be, and that next time someone tells you that you need to stop having fun with your money, you can look to them and say, suck it. As always, if you have any questions for me personally, or if you want to take a look at the services that I can provide to you, I've left my email and a link to my company website in the description box below. Thank you again for your time, and happy financing.